Like, it's really fascinating to me, right? Like it's like a generational change, at least from my perspective of like us to our parents, money maybe wasn't talked about a lot. And now it's like kids who are 6 and 7 are like hanging out in our meeting, like seeing mom and dad talk to financial planners and just normalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
So set up a family meeting. I think that would be a great place to start.
You have to be mindful of where your expertise starts and stops. I don't think this meeting is to give advice. I think this meeting is to say, hey, I think it's really important that we plan for the future and that we abide by your wishes, mom and dad. Welcome to Money Dates, the podcast that makes money conversations with your partner feel a little less taboo. I'm Natalie Slagle, a certified financial planner, and I'm joined by my husband and business partner, Dan Slagle, also a certified financial planner. Say hi, Dan.
Hello.
In each episode, we'll share honest stories and practical tips to help you and your partner feel more connected and confident on your financial journey. So grab your drink, get comfortable, and join us for our Money Dates. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Natalie. How are you?
Good. I never call you Daniel.
I don't think you've ever called me Daniel in my life. I don't think anyone's ever called me Daniel, actually.
Oh, last night we were having maybe kind of a harder conversation and I called you Dan and I felt the intensity in that moment. Do you remember that?
Yeah. When you call me by my first name, I'm like, oh, it's getting real fast. I was like, oh, okay. It's a hard conversation. What was the conversation even?
It was about when our daughter wakes up in the middle of the night, because she has been. I wanted you to go in first because lately I've been going in first. So I was asking you to.
Yeah.
And naturally, sometimes these conversations get a little heated. And I can't remember what I did, but I think I was trying to recenter us. And so I was just trying to get a point across. And I was like, Dan, I'm not trying to make this bigger than it needs to be.
Yeah. And by saying my name, you made it bigger than it needed to be.
I made it. Well,
and to be fair, I think if we have that conversation again about who's going in first in the middle of the night, we probably shouldn't do it when you and I are about to go to bed. I feel like we should have that conversation maybe in the afternoon.
Yeah, right. The day is done. We're finally in a place to relax. But we hadn't had that conversation. And it was important to me because if we didn't, then I was going to be the one to get up. And I was like, okay, it's your turn. Yeah. And you were like, yep. And then you got up and you went to her in the middle of the night and I wasn't needed at all. And so thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. It's always a good day when you wake up and know that you were the baby whisperer last night.
You were the baby whisperer
as in me last night. Yeah.
Yeah, you were pretty proud of that. And I'm proud of you as well. Speaking of family and family dynamics, today we have a really good episode because we've had some really good conversations about this with our clients. And we've actually helped some of our clients' parents with money. So today what we're talking about is just how to handle our parents' financial situation.
Yeah, and help them navigate their finances, right? I think that's a big talking piece of today.
Right. So I wanted to start off giving just a fun stat because I feel like now we're starting to incorporate some stats into these podcasts.
You're gonna be the stat person this podcast.
I'm the stat girl today. So this is a huge conversation in our industry, in the financial planning world. This is a huge conversation about the great wealth transfer. I remember when we launched our firm 6 years ago, this was in our business plan. Hey, there's going to be all this money coming from the silent generation, the boomers. They're going to be passing away and they're going to be transferring their wealth to the Gen Xers, millennials, and then maybe there's some leftover for the Gen Zers out there. But this creates a really important discussion. So the numbers, according to this consulting firm, is that $124 trillion in assets are set to change hands, I think between now and 2048. 124 trillion.
Wow. Wow.
That
Yeah, I feel like
is
that
a
number
lot.
fluctuates a lot, like depending on the study. But either way, we're talking about like trillions and trillions of
Trillions,
dollars. So,
trillions. Most of that, so a little over 106 trillion, is going directly to another individual, right? And then the rest will go to charity, which I think is pretty great. Almost $20 trillion is going to be going to charity over the next 20 some years. So that's really great. All about that. What that means, though, for the clients that we serve, the Gen Xers and millennials out there, is there's potentially money coming your way, right? And before it even hits you or comes to you, you inherit it or whatever it may be, there are so many steps that can happen that will allow that transfer that is inevitably going to take place to go quite smoothly, or the opposite will happen. And so I wanted to make sure that we have a conversation about that, about like, how do we help our parents with this transition in a way that's not like, this is going to be my money, give it to me. Like I'm trying to avoid that. I'm just trying to like make sure the family, and when I'm saying family, I'm talking the generations at play here, make this transfer and this transition go smoothly. And it's something that everyone feels really proud about that they set up. Dan, what thoughts are coming up for you as I start to talk about this?
the first thought is you and I come from like traditional, I feel like Midwestern households where money's not talked about. So I think that's just like a barrier in itself that we've had to work with and overcome, like within our own families, right? And so having that conversation is really important. I think there's a lot of professional help out there to help facilitate those conversations. If you're maybe a child and you have older parents, or adult child, I should say, and have older parents who maybe are in their later years of life, I think it's really important to have conversations about where assets intend to go and how you want things, or how the older generation really wants things structured or handled when they pass away. I think it's a huge missing piece of this whole dynamic of the great wealth transfer, right? Like you see headlines, like you go on a CNBC, you see headlines all the time about the great wealth transfer, but it's like, what does this actually mean for me as personally, as a millennial, as you as a millennial? Like, how do you better prepare yourself for that event and set yourself up for success and set your family up for success at the end of the day?
Right. Yeah. I want to provide listeners some ways to have the conversation. And I think there's so many ways you can have a conversation, and doing it with empathy, and you're not trying to give advice. You're just trying to like create the space to have the conversation. Right. And so I was looking at, in preparation for this podcast, I was looking up ways on like, how do you bridge this conversation? And when you look it up, it's all these like beautiful questions that are asked. And I think because I've been having these conversations a lot, like with my dad and my stepmom, and I wasn't as empathetic as like all of the podcasts say to, or not the podcast, but just like the post. I wasn't as empathetic because that's not really like my style with them. It was much more pointed to the fact. And it was just kind of like, if you don't do this, it's going to fall on my lap. As the kind of financial professional out of the three kids, it's going to fall on my lap. And this is going to be a huge headache for me. And your wishes will not play out how you want. And so in order for you to avoid this, I need you to go and do XYZ. I was very like pointed and direct with them because that's how I communicate with them. But the point why I'm saying all this is you can Google, how do I have these conversations? And that's helpful. But I think just like do it in a way that feels natural and in a way that your parents aren't going to be like, who are you? Like, this isn't you to ask it like this. And so even just having the conversation is so much further ahead than most people. And your parents, if the conversation hasn't been started by them yet at this point, they're going to be appreciative that you're bringing it up.
Yeah, and I think it's important because in our seats and in our profession, we've seen the outcome if these conversations don't happen, right? So I think we're better prepared to, one, have the conversation, but then also you almost like the example you gave with your dad and stepmom. It's almost like a fear tactic. And
I do not recommend to listeners. This is just what I did.
don't do that. Don't do that. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on what works best for,
it did work because styles. now they have their estate plan. But anyways.
Yeah. So I think just finding ways to have the conversation. It can be tricky though. It can be really hard to bridge that gap.
Yeah. Can we share more about kind of our personal experiences? Because Dan, you've dealt with this in a very different manner than what I have, and in the fact of you helping a parent after your mom passed away. So I'd love to have you kind of share about that experience.
Ooh. I'm going to recommend we do audio only in case I get teary-eyed, but more likely you might. Yeah. Happy to share my experience for sure, because I think it can be really helpful when going through an event that I did. And, we've already seen clients take away some of the follow-up items from it. So about 2 years ago, almost to the day, my mom passed away unexpectedly. And I just recall like one of the last things she said to me when she was on her hospital bed about to get wheeled into surgery, she like grabbed me by my right cheek and she was like, make sure you take care of your dad. And when she said that, she meant like, well, probably in general, I don't know, my dad's here right now. We're taking care of him. But like, I really think she meant that from a financial standpoint. So she also followed up by saying like, she gave me information on like where account information, literally kept a notebook in our attic, in my childhood home, in our attic. And it was like line item by line item income that was coming in for them and expenses, like monthly bills, and like where things were being paid from.
It was your mom and dad's financial plan in a notebook.
They're like DIY financial plan that she pointed me to in the attic, like, which was also in a box. And like, I would have found it eventually as we were going through things, but I would have had no idea. And so after she passed, like we gave it like a week, right? And even that might be too early for some people. But the first recommendation I have is like, your grieving process like is so volatile. Mm-hmm. Just make sure like when you're ready, just take action on it. Otherwise, things might just get prolonged from like a facilitation standpoint. So she pointed me to this notebook about a week after she passed away. I went up in the attic and I tried to find it and I found it. And it allowed me to like really understand what was going on from a cash flow perspective for the two of them. Because, there's the adage of like, there's one financial spouse, there's one financial partner, maybe the non-financial partner. We try to bridge that gap, right? And eliminate that whole ideal. That's like why we started our business. But I think in our parents' generation, it's likely more common. It was common in my own household. So I had to help my dad navigate all these changes because my mom was really kind of in the know of what was going on. My dad knew what was going on, but in terms of maybe like accessing accounts, right? Like he was not as involved. So take a step back once we got that notebook. And I should also mention, I wrote a blog about this on helping a parent navigate finances after a loss. And we'll put that in the show notes. The first thing that we had to do essentially was order a death certificate because you can't really do anything without the death certificate, right? When you're talking about changing account titling, my mom she had pension income, she had Social Security, right? Like you need the death certificate to prove that she's no longer there to help then that money go to my dad in the proper flow. That was step one for us. And then from there, what we did is my parents had joint accounts at the time. So they were both listed as account holders on their bank assets. So we went to a local credit union. We scheduled an appointment. We sat down with a representative and we retitled all of the accounts. So moved everything from joint ownership into single ownership and into my dad's name. And at that point, we also decided to add what's called payable on death or transfer on death to the bank accounts, just in case, like when he passes away, like the assets move to the intended beneficiary. I also remember that visit, and this is really funny in my mind. He had never used a ATM before.
Never?
I shouldn't say never, I probably will say never though, based on this
Yeah.
experience. And I remember we got a new debit card, and like as we were leaving the bank, we did a trial run of like, okay, let's go through the ATM drive-through, and we went through the drive-through, and I explained how it worked, and like, I was giving him crap about like almost hitting the post by the ATM machine.
I can hear this happening.
Yeah. At this age now, I always look forward to dishing it back to him because he was such a critic of my student driving days. But after we got the bank account set up, it was also, we had to update all the beneficiaries on his retirement account now, right? Because my mom was listed as the primary, and that needed to change because she was no longer there. So we basically reordered the beneficiaries and how assets would flow if he were to pass away from a retirement account standpoint. And then I'm trying to think, do you want me to go through the steps? Like, is that the intention of this conversation?
I guess the intention is just to have a conversation about helping your parents with these things. And so your experience is that you really stepped in to help after your mom passed away. So, a child of two parents, you had, so it's almost like it really depends on where are both your parents living? Are they married? There's all these things. And what you're making me realize is that it can be at any point. And the point that you, I don't want to say intercepted, but kind of like came in to help out. I'm going to still say like your mom and dad's finances, even though your mom's no longer here, but like a very important parts because it again goes to this great wealth transfer. If there is any money to pass to you and your brother, it is going to be so smooth because of everything you're listing and talking about right now, which goes to show there's a lot of steps, and you're not even done, right? Like there's even more steps you did.
I'm like halfway through, right? I'm not even, and then we contacted insurance providers because my mom was a state worker and had low cost access to healthcare and dental plans that we needed to switch over. We needed to contact the Social Security Administration, like switch the benefit amount from that my mom was getting, make sure my dad's getting that amount. The pension income she was getting, make sure my dad's getting that. Luckily, they did elect like a joint survivor benefit. I mean, the last big thing was the estate plan, right? And like they didn't have one. And you and I, mainly me, I had been trying to convince them for the last like 10 years to get one done. And to your point earlier, like it took a major event for things to click and say, I need to get that done. Right. So I think the whole point of this is having the conversation early before someone passes away will set you up for better. I don't know. It'll set you up for success. I don't want to say better or worse, right? Like,
yeah,
because you're losing someone at the end of the day, but I think it allows you to be better prepared. And I think it allows the person who is also like eventually will pass away. It allows them to understand like, these are my wishes when I do pass away. But like overall, that conversation still is really hard to have because no one likes talking about death.
Except me. I like weirdly like talking about it.
That's interesting. Why do you think?
I don't like talking about it. But like I think it's so important to talk about that it never weirds me out to talk about it. And
that's
so
fair. Yeah.
But anyways, it's don't have to go down that. I think you just have to start talking about it because what we have both experienced with our parents is that it takes years for them to listen.
You and I have been together for like, how many years now at this point? At least 12 years?
Yeah.
Like, something like that. And this has been our profession during those 12 years. And I feel like it's been a 12-year thing that we're just trying to work on with our parents.
Right. And now we can say, all of our parents, all of the people in that role have their things set up. And it will make our lives easier. It has nothing to do with it'll make our lives wealthier or not wealthier. It will just make things easier while also giving our parents the satisfaction that things will be will pan out how they want, because they're the ones inevitably creating the plan, especially, if you create an estate plan, you sit down with an attorney, they make sure everything's done.
Can I just interject real quick? Because you said something that I think is really important. It makes things easier. And for me, what allowed it to be easier is because of the grieving process is not easy, right? And when we're literally talking about death, because that's what it is, right? That's what the great wealth transfer is.
It's people dying.
Mainly, unless you're getting gifts while your parents are still alive, but it's people passing away and receiving assets. And so, at least from my experience, what I would share is once everything is buttoned up, it allows you to not focus on maybe some of the minutia of the financial side.
Yes.
And it allows you to focus on like self-help and self-care, because the grieving process for listeners who have been through it, who've lost someone close, it's a roller coaster. And to have all these things going on, like I remember when my mom passed away, it was like, you're like riding this initial high. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's weird because you're like going to, and maybe it's my personality, but you get in this like mode of like, we need to do everything now.
Yep.
And you're having the celebration of life. You're seeing people you haven't seen in 15 years and things. You're just on like this wave and of like seeing people and being happy to reconnect with people, but also like grieving the loss for me of my mom. It's just a constant ebb and flow of feelings. So if you can get it buttoned up early and be better prepared, I think it allows you to set yourself up for success going through that emotional roller coaster.
Right. And not have to worry about administration and paperwork while you're grieving. Because again, because you can speak to that. Thank God, both my parents are still living, but I can speak on, and both you and I can speak on from the professional world of managing investments. The second we find out someone has passed away, we essentially lock their account. We cannot trade in that account, and we need to wait until all the admin stuff and get the accounts into the beneficiaries. And usually in our world, we want to be so quick with that because we want to get it into the appropriate titling since that person's no longer. So my point is that like, as soon as all of these people and all these places start to find out that someone passes away, they're knocking on your door to say, hey, you got to do this stuff. You got to sign this form. And if things haven't been buttoned up, to your point, wow, that really distracts from the grieving process. And you have to get out of the grief and kind of go into just the world of paperwork. And that's upsetting. Mm-hmm. So having this conversation is so important. And just however you feel is best to have this conversation is great. And I think you have to go into it thinking, that you're having this conversation because you want to help your family, and they have to be your parents have to be in a place where they are willing and wanting to accept, maybe not your help or advice, but just like accept the conversation. Right. And so I think first and foremost, like just put yourself in the seat of like what you're about to do, what this conversation is. And it's so much more than, hey, mom, do you have your will done? It's like we're talking about their whole working years or their livelihood put on paper. There's so many memories around money. There's so many stories. There's a lot of emotion in this. And so it's going to be an emotional topic. And so you got to like start with the empathy in that regard rather than urgency, because hopefully it's not urgent. Hopefully you're having this conversation because you're just trying to be proactive, right? And so making sure it's coming from empathy and not urgency, I think is the way to go about it.
Yeah. And I think we've seen a lot of success recently of clients having like family meetings, right? Like older clients that we work with, having family meetings with the next generation. If they have, like 2 or 3 kids, adult children, making sure that everyone knows like where what intentions are, like where things can be located. And I think just having again, that conversation in a family unit, right? Like we have so many clients who, again, most of our clients are in their early 40s, late 30s, early 40s. And like, how many times do you see their kids in our meetings? Like, it's really fascinating to me, right? Like it's like a generational change, at least from my perspective of like us to our parents, money maybe wasn't talked about a lot. And now it's like kids who are 6 and 7 are like hanging out in our meeting, like seeing mom and dad talk to financial planners and just normalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
So to go back to it, like set up a family meeting. I think that would be a great place to start.
Right. And you have to be mindful of where your expertise starts and stops. I don't think this meeting is to give advice. I think this meeting is to say, hey, I think it's really important that we plan for the future and that we abide by your wishes, mom and dad. In this setting, what I told my parents is that I feel as a child, it is my responsibility to enact their wishes. Mm-hmm. And not just with their wealth, but just with everything. And so in order for me to fulfill that responsibility, I need to know from them what is important. How do I reflect what's important to you, whether it's with your wealth, your celebration of life? You tell me, like, how do I continue your legacy? And I think some of this, there is like the direct questions that should eventually be asked. Do you have a will? Do you have a trust? Who is your attorney? Where is your estate plan located? Like those direct questions are important. I just don't think we start there. But I think the other aspects of this conversation that will inevitably come out is the legacy. What is important for us to do, to say, to what traditions are important that we carry on when you're no longer here. And I think those conversations are so beautiful and really cool that a family can have while everyone's still there. But getting to the direct questions on making sure their financials are set up well and will be reflected to what their requests are is like, that's really important part of all this.
Yeah. So
thanks for sharing your story, Dan. I do always get a little emotional hearing you talk about it. And it goes to show like it's a work in progress and we have a unique perspective, and especially you. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Natalie.
Right. Thanks, Dan.
Hey, if you've enjoyed this episode and are looking for personalized financial guidance, schedule a free complimentary consultation using the link in the description below. Natalie and Dan Slagle are the founding partners of Fuse Financial Planning, a registered investment advisor. The information provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice or a recommendation to buy or sell any securities. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Advisory services are offered to clients or prospective clients where Fuse Financial Planning and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For more information, including our disclosures, please visit our website at www.fusefinancial.com.